Welcome everyone to today's event, Setting Up an Independent Practice, our interview with Anne Stokes. A very warm welcome to you, Anne.
Hello, thank you. That's nice. And hello to everybody. Some people I know, I think.
Yeah, so notice that in the chat room, some people saying they recognise the room, so
Right.
yes. And yeah, so a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us online today and chatting with us from all over the world, I guess. Um, Feel free to join us in the chat room. I know, Anne, you're looking forward to questions and comments coming in about your work and the book. And
Yep.
yeah, and Saz is in the chat room. She'll pop her email in, and if anyone's having any difficulties, just pop Sandra an email and she'll help you get registered. Great. So, to get us going, Anne, because we're all meeting online today, I wonder if I could ask you to give us an idea whereabouts in the world you're located.
Okay, I'm in the UK and I'm in Hampshire, which is one of the southern counties of the UK, and I'm in a small village. And I'm in my counselling room in a small village.
Well, it's lovely to get yeah, a look into where you work and do your counselling and supervision, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for
One of the
that.
reasons is so that we don't get interrupted by the three cats if I was anywhere else in the house.
Ah, they would want in, I guess.
Absolutely. Yep.
Brilliant. Oh, that it's nice to be in your space with you. Thank you. Mm. And to kind of get into the interview, maybe you could give us a sense of your professional journey to now, Anne. Would that be okay?
Mm. Okie dokie. For the first half of my working life, I was a teacher in secondary education,
Mm-hmm.
and then I trained as a counsellor, and I finished. Sounds dreadful. I finished my counselling training in 1985, which is a long time ago. Um, I went back into secondary education as a deputy head at that point. And for those of you who are used to balancing things, I was using my counselling skills with staff, with students, with parents, and trying to maintain boundaries and all sorts of things. It was quite an exciting time. And I also had a small private practice at that time. Um, then in 1989, I decided I didn't want to be a head, which was where I thought I was going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to be a trainer at the West London Institute, which is, for those who know London, on the west side of London, and increased my private practice.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because I was very lucky, I was seconded to do a master's at Bristol in counselling, training, and supervision. And because I was doing that, I actually went down to part time and grew the business. And eventually stopped being at West London, became an independent visiting tutor trainer at Bristol, and had the business growing here in Hampshire, in counselling, in training, in supervision. Um, and it's been a bit like that. This is what you shouldn't do in independent practice, and it's one of the reasons that we wrote the book. It sort of evolved. Things happened, and I'm not very good, or I wasn't then very good at saying no to things. So I kept taking on more. I ran the diploma in counselling at work at Bristol. I helped with and then ran the masters in counselling, training, and supervision at Bristol. I did lots of odd training, increasing number of supervisees and increasing number of clients. And yes, it sort of all just grew like that, exponentially, whatever the word is. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've had a really busy time, I guess, of it, and
Yeah,
mm,
yeah,
mm.
yeah. And
And one
now,
of the specialities you've developed is working online, I guess. I'm just thinking of.
indeed,
Mm,
yep. I began that about a decade ago. Basically, as some people probably in the chat room will know, I started that because I didn't believe you could work online. I didn't think you could form a relationship. I thought it was a total load of nonsense. So I volunteered to be a client for a group that was training, really to prove that it couldn't work. And I did such a good piece of work that, as a client, that I decided I'd better eat my words and train as an online counsellor. And I did that. And then because I was already a trainer, I was asked to go onto the staff and become a tutor, become a trainer with Online Training Limited, and eventually became one of the directors. So it's sort of been and wrote the book on online training with Jill Jones, who's one of the other directors. Yeah.
Wow. So that's been a whole interesting thread there, and
Yeah.
fascinated that it
Yeah.
started by you wanting to prove that it wouldn't work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here I am sitting in this peculiar space now.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We're online, we're face to face,
Yeah,
and we've got a
yeah.
chat room. Um, and Kate Anthony was just reminding us you've also got a column in Tilt magazine that's just the new issue's
I
just out. Mm.
Yes, yes. I do the supervision column in Tilt, and those of you who might have read it, the online resolutions for this new year are still in place, but how much longer, I don't know.
That's very impressive, Anne. Yeah, we're nearly at January 31st and you're still
Um,
there.
yep, yep.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for such a broad view of some of the things that you've done in terms of your experience in therapy as a therapist.
Mm,
We're here to talk about the book that you've written, Setting Up an Independent Practice.
yeah.
And, I wanted to ask you, what got you thinking about that book? What was the motivation behind writing it?
Well, as with many things in my life, it came about in a very peculiar way. Because I had done work for the publisher, Paul Grave, a number of times before, I get asked to look at proposals for books. And Robert Bor, my co-author for Independent Practice, had written a proposal. And I looked at it and I thought it was very good and got quite excited about it. And in my usual gobby way, made quite a lot of suggestions about how it might go. And he didn't know who'd put in this information. And he asked our commissioning editor if he thought the person who had written this might be prepared to write the book with him. So I was asked and said yes, because actually I am passionate about independent practice. And while I've jokingly sort of talked about how my practice grew, I think that things were very different when I started independent practice. I think now people who are building their practice have to be much more mindful about all sorts of things, from the practical and the ethical issues through to the financial things. So because I felt passionate, I wanted to share that with people. And Rob's a great person to write with, so that was good too.
Mm,
Mm.
fantastic. So that, again, you've kind of come into that project almost sideways or something. It's been,
Absolutely,
yeah,
story of my life.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it really
yeah.
caught your passion about working in that way, working independently, having your own business, I guess, as a
Yes,
therapist. Mm.
yeah. And I think that's the thing that sometimes counsellors are not good at recognizing, that actually, if we're going to have an independent practice, we do need to be business people as well. And it can be thought that there's a real tension between the therapeutic side of ourselves and the business side of ourselves. And I don't think there is, because well, I can remember a workshop that we had on the diploma in counselling at work years ago, when Anne Schooler, who is very much into to helping people grow their businesses, came and talked. And she said, if only we would allow ourselves, counsellors actually have enormous skills because we communicate, because we're used to listening to people, we can grow our businesses very well. We've got the skills there.
Mm.
So,
So it's joining up those skills with a very
yeah,
important part of being in business, I guess.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And not being afraid to be in business.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, there's nothing dirty about being in business, nothing
Yeah.
sordid. I mean, there could be, and we've all seen it, but there doesn't have to be, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like sometimes, or often with therapists, there can be a block that doesn't allow us to transfer those skills into
Yeah,
marketing and
yeah,
being in business.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I think that probably Mika may be in the chat room, and I know that she's doing some marketing workshops online in the near future. But I think she would probably agree with me that there's a difference between marketing and selling. If you are selling, you're only concerned about that one-off transaction. If you're marketing, you're actually concerned about building a relationship and having an ongoing relationship with the client, with the training organization, with the organization you're supervising in, whoever it might be. And that's very different, because you don't make promises you can't fulfill. You think through the whole thing. You include your client in it, and you actually, I think, work in a much more ethical and professional way. That's my take on it, anyway. Other people might disagree.
Yeah, but it makes so much sense, and what you're saying, that being mindful of the relationship and wanting to be in relationship with a client for over a long period of time, perhaps. You're not just going to say something to get that sale.
Absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. Yep. And we know that from our differently from our work in making contracts with individual clients,
Mm.
and really, I'm just talking about sort of expanding that into the business.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. Well, I mean, I want to ask you more about the book, and I can see lots of questions coming in. So maybe I'll ask you some
Excellent.
questions, and then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can come back
Go
to the
ahead.
book, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll get us into some of the themes in the book.
Mm.
So one of the first questions was, what did Anne find hardest when setting up her practice? What was the biggest challenge, do you think?
Mm. I think for me,